Hello, my fellow wealth hackers. Welcome to another episode of the Truth About Real Estate Investing Show. My name is Erwin Cito, bringing you the truth about real estate investing. Today was my kids' first kickboxing class, and they loved it. Kids in kickboxing? That's crazy, right? Well, I am one of those neurotic fathers of a daddy's girl, so what do you expect? And if you've ever watched any UFC, then you know all pro fighters are trained in kickboxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Unfortunately, our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu club has remained closed during this pandemic, so for now, it's just kickboxing. Next will be track and field. As I've told my kids, it's actually best to run away and run away fast from a fight. In all seriousness, I'm just wanting to bully-proof my kids, especially my daughter, should she ever have to teach a boy their manners. I think it's better that she teaches them versus daddy teaches them. As the saying goes, two black belts are better than one. Don't worry though, we're not letting our kids have all the fun. Our kickboxing gym is actually expanding, so they'll have an area for adult classes to go on at the same time. So Cherry and I will we'll do the adult classes that happen at the same time that the kid classes are going on. I do, after all, need all the practice I can get to postpone that day where the kids can beat up their old man. On to this week's show. We have Seth Ferguson, a real estate investor TV show host, a real estate podcast host, author, soon to be second-time author, apartment building investor, and stock hacker. I first met Seth a year ago when he invited me onto his podcast. It's one of my favorite interviews. Not only is Seth a great producer and dresser, if you watch the YouTube, Seth's wearing a very nice three-piece suit. And when he showed up in my office, it's actually funny because I don't usually dress up. I was wearing my Father's Day present for my kids, which is an Iron Man t-shirt. So when I was at the office, I realized, Seth is probably going to show up in a three-piece suit and make me look like a complete slob, more than I usually am. But Seth showed up in a golf shirt and shorts. It was hot outside. Anyways, he came. So Seth. What makes Seth also special as a podcast host was he came prepared like no other I've ever seen before for our interview. And I've posted the links both to the YouTube and to Seth's website page for his Purchase to Profits of a podcast. So it's all in the show notes. I haven't had much free time these days. So when folks ask me out for a coffee, wanting to know my story, I just send them the link to this interview and they'll learn a lot more about me listening to this versus taking me out for a coffee. Plus, coffee is so expensive these days. After the interview, while Seth was picking up his kit, putting away all his lighting and cameras, we got chatting and he mentioned the potholes in his life, and he's about to share what these potholes are. I just don't want to spoil it. You know me, I'm always wanting to help. So I invited Seth to take the Stock Hacker Academy, which was the next weekend. And funny enough, I think it was almost exactly a year ago because that was his birthday. So Seth came to Stock Hacker Academy on his birthday. This past weekend was Seth's birthday, and he'll be joining us this coming weekend for the all new Stock Hacker Academy. And don't worry, folks, especially for the haters, I'm not selling anything because by the time you listen to this, the next course has already started, and you won't be able to get in. Anyways, so I chat with Seth once in a while, and I was chatting with him, see if he wanted to come on the podcast, asking him how his stock hacking was going, and I invited him into our office, the iWIN hub, for a tutorial on stock hacking. No charge, just as a friend trying to help another friend. And I suggested if he wants to learn more, he should take the all new version because Seth took the beta version, and now I suggest that he take the all new 2.0 version of the Stock Hacker Academy because based on the feedback, it is a lot more comprehensive than the original, and he signed up then and there. The alumni fee is nominal anyways, and Seth loves to learn from the best, as you'll hear in this week's interview. Seth has undergone the worst joint venture partnership divorce I've ever seen. I couldn't come up with another title. I didn't want to use that as the title because I didn't think Seth would be okay with it, but he thought it was a great title. And it's the truth. I'm not over exaggerating. This is the worst I've heard. If you've had worse, please let me know and we'll have to talk about it on the podcast. So anyways, the only thing that's more astounding with how bad this went is how high Seth has rebounded in building his real estate influence, his portfolio in apartment buildings in the U.S., and the relationships he's started and continuing with. Seth's trajectory is into the atmosphere. It's keep an eye out for this guy. He's up to big things. And if I enjoy these stories to share these stories with all the listeners, because if you ever feel down, think of Seth, and then set your efforts and your level of action higher. I give you Seth Ferguson. All right, Seth, what's keeping you busy these days?
What's keeping me busy? Ooh, a whole bunch of stuff.
What's keeping you busy?
Well, I got back into fencing. I used to fence.
In Milton? There's places to fence.
No, I go to Mississauga. So I'm doing fencing. So that's cool. Because I used
with the sword, the foil, not like what everyone else is doing with pressurized lumber from Home Depot.
No. It's legit. Yeah, I don't want to dig holes. So I'm doing fencing. And then, obviously working out and stuff, like with stress, like working out is the best thing you can do. And basically I'm just trying to replace, like I did hockey. I refereed hockey for such a long time and that stopped. And now I'm all washed up. So yeah, just filling the time. I played the bagpipes too. So doing that. So I play in a competitive pipe band, writing a couple books on I'm a history nerd. So writing a couple history books. Lots of stuff. YouTube channel, TV show.
And you have one kid?
Yeah.
One daughter?
No, a 3-year-old son.
Your son, sorry.
Yeah. He was supposed to start hockey this year, but it's canceled. So, yeah. With the little kids, they canceled the season.
How's he going to turn into Gretzky if you can't get him on ice?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, where to start? Let's start with a TV show.
Okay.
How did you start with a TV show? First, explain the show, because you have a real estate TV show.
Yeah. So it's called Real Estate Simplified.
Uh-huh.
It's a cable TV show, so it's not like syndicated on satellite or anything like that. But yeah, it's a general topic TV show. You actually came on one episode. So we'll talk about buying and selling your home, investing in residential real estate, commercial real estate, structuring on the legal side, accounting as it relates to real estate, market trends, marketing, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really geared towards a broad audience. The whole goal is to present factual information to the audience watching at home, because I'm not sure about you, but when I pick up the newspaper or something, it's like nails on a chalkboard, just reading all the crap out there. So I really wanted to do something good and get experts on who can deliver a solid message to somebody and really tell it like it is, rather than just having a journalist at home who thinks they know real estate, but who has never worked in real estate, who has never bought real estate, writing their opinion on it.
At least the journalist does fact checking. Have you seen what's been written on Facebook?
Oh, don't even get me started. So, yeah. And, we'll probably get into some other stuff later on, but getting the TV show was almost like a rebuilding type of thing for me too. So that was a big, important first step. So
rebuilding from what?
The incident.
Before we get to the incident.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
How did you get a TV show?
I asked for it.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'd done some clips, like, little snippets and stuff like that years ago. And the producer had commented that, hey, like, we really want to do a TV show about real estate at some point.
Uh-huh.
Kept that in the back of my head. When I was kind of changing my life a little bit, picked up the phone, cold called, and said, hey, are you guys still interested in doing a real estate TV show? Went and pitched it, got the show together. And now, Corona set us back with the filming. So we are restarting season 2 now, because we got halfway and then Corona hit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're behind. But yeah, it's great so far. I'm having a whole lot of fun doing it.
Well, yeah, and you get recognized.
I had this grandma at the grocery store. She walks up. She's like, "Are you Seth?" I said, "Yes, I am." So, yeah, it's kind of cool that one grandma watches me at least on TV. Yeah,
it's only been one season so far.
Yeah, only one season, and season 2. I'm not really sure when everything's airing now, because everything got messed up with Corona. We tried a couple Zoom episodes. It just didn't work, but we actually got into studio again last week. Mm-hmm. So we filmed our first episode back on set. And so we'll be filming for the next 2 months, and then that'll be a wrap for season 2.
Yeah, you had Kayla on, right?
Yeah, that was last week. Yeah, I think it was last week.
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I'm all messed up with
That's
that
okay.
time. But yeah, so that was a great episode. I was telling her I would love to have a debate between a pro rent control and an anti rent control group, whoever that is.
Hey, we're not anti rent control.
We
just want to cover our costs.
Yeah, and I think if somebody's risking capital in the market, they should be able to achieve a reasonable return in exchange for that risk. If you eliminate that return, there goes the incentive to put capital at risk because they'll just put their capital somewhere else.
Yes, let's take them to the market.
Yeah. So yeah, we can go on for hours about that. But I think that would be a fun episode. But we'd have to go with a 5-second delay with the beep and stuff like that.
It'll be good because she doesn't get hot versus
no. Yeah.
Because the arguments are oh, never mind. Let's not go into it. It's like debating these impossible topics.
Oh yeah. On either side, there's good points on either side because there are bad landlords out there.
Oh, there's horrible landlords out there,
and tenants need to be protected. And then there are bad tenants, and good landlords need to be protected. I think what gets lost in the mix, though, is your typical real estate owner who's renting out their property. They're just normal people who are acquiring properties to make their lives better, like down the road for retirement. It's most residential landlords are not doing it to get mega rich. They're just buying properties so they can sell one and send their kids to school or retire. I just think in the media, and whenever you get polarizing views, people get entrenched in their beliefs, and the middle ground, the truth, really gets lost. So whenever a new bill comes out, and that's one thing we were talking with Kayla, Bill 184, it's just streamlining the complaint process and a couple other changes. You have a whole bunch of fluff going on in the media about, this is bad for tenants. This is called the eviction bill. That's not the case. It's just fixing problems that arose with, the landlord and tenant process and complaints and all that stuff. So we went off on a bit of a tangent. But
we have a lot to cover here.
Yeah.
And has the show helped you in your business and your investing?
Same with podcasting, but the TV show, it's all about connecting with people. That's the main benefit. Yes, the people at home get solid real estate information from real experts. But for me, I'm able to meet different people, have them on the show. And that's another person added to my Rolodex. I think that for me, selfishly, that's the main benefit for me, right? And same with podcasting. You've got a podcast that's been running for a while. The people you have on, it just expands your network. Same with my podcast. I've had guys running billion-dollar real estate companies. What's an hour of their time worth? And they've just spoken with me for an hour. It's cool. And if I have questions, I can actually reach out to them because we have a connection now. And without the podcast, without the TV show, that wouldn't have been there at all.
So this is a real estate investing show. How's your own real estate investing going?
My own real estate investing is recovering. So it was going really well. Hit a very large pothole along the road, but I'm getting back into it. I'm involved in a 278 unit apartment deal in Orlando right now. We closed on that last October. So that's really exciting. Corona has been interesting. We had occupancy drop because of Corona. Occupancy is now back up over 90%. I think last month we were 91% occupied, which is up from our low point of 80. So that's really exciting. So we're chugging along now with our value add plan, changing the exteriors, doing some painting, all that kind of stuff. So that was a big step for me getting involved in that because that's where I want to take my real estate investing now, just because I can scale with it. I found when I was doing the single family homes, the duplexes, for me to hit my real estate goal, I'd have to own 1,000 houses. And owning 1,000 houses is just sheer craziness. I could not do it. But with apartments, you can scale a lot easier. The structuring is different. The syndication structure, which is how many of these deals are done, it's built to raise capital. So it's a lot more efficient. It's true passive investing on the investor side. To me, there's a lot of benefits. And I've been on both sides. And I just felt this was a better way to go for me. So really excited. So getting involved in that deal was a big step. And there's going to be more down the pipeline.
Similar, also syndicated, also US based?
Yeah. So right now, I may do a Canadian deal at some point. I've had discussions with a couple people, But the value add strategy that we're using, so we're looking for, below market rents, trying to find some renovations that need to be done, some efficiencies, maybe on the operations side. There's so many things you can do. We were just talking about rent control, but rent control in the province of Ontario makes it very challenging to really force the appreciation in terms of rents on the property, because you can't acquire the asset and then raise the rents to market value. Like, those rents could be 10 years lagging behind because the person's been there for so long. In the States, depending on the state, you're looking at a place like Texas, you're able to acquire the asset. There's no rent control. And so you're able to gradually move that rent up to market value. And the tenant's paying market rent, which is what the market is dictating what rent should be. I think from that standpoint, for me and the types of deals I'm interested in doing, the US makes a lot more sense. The timetable for value add in Ontario, or let's say California, where it's rent controlled, you're much longer. And it's hard to realize those returns for investors in the right timeline. Typically, a syndication, you're going to hold the asset between 5 to 7 years. In a rent controlled situation, that's very challenging to really drive those rents and boost up the NOI, so that way you can get a higher valuation.
And so you have partners in this?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you mentioned passive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because none of this stuff is passive if you're doing it yourself.
So I'm involved in a group of individuals, and a number of these guys have been doing this for a long time. One of them controls over $1 billion of multifamily real estate now. So I'm learning from them what they're doing, how they structure things, how they position the asset, and all that stuff. It's amazing. I've learned so much over the past, let's say, year and a half. My real estate knowledge has gone from what I knew before, which was good, but I've just exploded in terms of like the commercial multifamily space, which I think a lot of people, when they start investing in real estate, they know houses. That's what I was selling before, so I knew it. Most people have lived in a house, so that's what they gravitate towards. But and
they invest locally usually.
Yeah. And before I didn't even realize this world was out there. And now that I know about it, I'm just so excited.
Very cool. And then the path for you think is going to be continuing in the States?
I think so, at least for now. Rent control is an issue. I think that's a very serious issue. And just the scale of the market is a whole lot bigger. Like I said, I may do a deal locally in Ontario because I've been approached by a couple of people and I've talked with them about it, but it would be a smaller deal, more like a longer term kind of hold thing, rather than a syndication built for returns in that 5 to 7 year period.
So what kind of returns?
Yeah. So, for example, the one in Orlando, that pencils out to about 17% annualized. But when we're talking about real estate, you know this too, like cash flow is so hard to come by in strong markets. When you're doing like let's say a duplex, scale works in your favor. So the cash flow for, let's say, a 200 unit apartment is, like, it's able to support full-time staff. It's able to support, your splits and how you're paying the investors and how you're getting compensated as the general partner. There's just more meat on the bone. And I look at what's happened with Corona. A lot of people I know, like they've done basement apartments. They haven't been able to rent it out, or rents have dropped depending on the market you're in. With us, our occupancy dropped to 80%, but we were still able to send out our monthly distributions to investors. It was business as usual because our break-even point is 63%, I think. So we would have to drop to 63% occupancy to break even on the deal. You look at a duplex in the GTA, you lose let's say you lose your upstairs tenant, you're underwater if you recently bought it. So I think you're a lot more stable. The bigger you go, your debt terms are a lot more attractive. You get interest-only periods. It's non-recourse debt. So the bank can seize the asset, but they can't go after you. So I just see so many benefits. And for me, my real estate goals, I want to scale big. I have big goals for that. And that's just, I think it's a better fit for me. But residential estate, I did really well with my little portfolio as it was growing on the residential side. It couldn't scale to the level I wanted it to scale to.
So how is this syndicated mortgage? Is a syndicated mortgage?
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. All right. So a syndication, we're really talking about how we're structuring the investment. So a syndication, you have two sides. You have a general partner and a limited partner. So
this is very popular in the JV world.
Yes.
For the more, I only hear in commercial people like Shane Melanson, who was on this, talked about that.
Okay.
And I think he's the first person I heard talk about it. So it's usually a pretty high level JV structure.
Yes.
As in like a bigger project.
Yeah. So you mentioned a syndicated mortgage. A syndicated mortgage is really you're investing in the debt attached to the property. Mm-hmm. We're talking about equities here, where you're actually investing in the equity in the property. So you have general partners and limited partners. The GP is the person running the deal. It's often a team when you're at that scale. So you may have 6 people on the GP side. They're the real estate experts. They're finding the deal. They're analyzing it, underwriting it, managing it, all that stuff. The limited partners, they're the people bringing capital to the mix, but they're limited. So what that means is the law affords them protections. So let's say you and I, we buy a duplex together. And the deal goes south. Well, we're both active, even though I may be bringing the capital and you might be managing it, we're both active in the eyes of the law because we're just in it as 2 partners doing the deal. So the lender can come after both of us.
Or the tenant.
Or the tenant, yeah.
Or even someone who slipped and fell on the property.
That's true, yeah. With the syndication structure, the limited partners, they're just bringing their capital. They're afforded these protections. So it's true passive investing. They're not seen as being active at all. So if something does go wrong, let's say in a deal, the general partners take all the risk. The limited partners risk their capital like they would in any investment, but that's where it stops. So Wall Street has been using...
so you can't go underwater.
No, yeah. The Wall Street has been using the syndication structure for years, and it's made to raise large amounts of capital. And we're really talking about, you're buying shares in the entity, and we can go into a whole lot more detail, but I don't think that's relevant now. But it's a more sophisticated way of raising money and structuring these deals. And we can also talk about real estate funds, which is very similar to a syndication structure, except the fund acts as a life of its own, so that it will buy properties, sell properties over the lifetime. And funds can run for 30 years, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years, you name it. And I know a number of people who are running very successful funds. And one of the advantages with running a fund, let's say, is you always have capital ready to rock and roll. So you can sometimes get better terms, better pricing because you're able to pounce on it. With the syndication, if I'm raising capital from an investor, that investor is able to say yes or no to that specific deal. It's a deal at a time type of thing. With the fund structure, the investor will invest in the fund criteria, then the fund manager will use that fund criteria to go out and pick up additional assets.
And this structures our investment. So you mentioned this, you invested in one that was on one. It's not one building, it's several buildings, right?
Oh yeah. So it's one property. So,
one property.
Yeah. Sure. So we've got like 7 different buildings on there and 278 units. But I'm on the general partner side. I'm not on the limited partner side with that. And it's a lot of fun.
What qualifies someone to be a general partner? What does someone have to bring to the table in order to be one?
Well, like I said, like when you get into larger multifamily deals, it's more like a team sport. And I like it because, just like with hockey, you've got your power play line, you've got your penalty kill line, you've got your, fourth line, grinders, you've got your first line superstars. It's the same thing in a multifamily deal. You've got somebody doing the underwriting. So the person analyzing the spreadsheets, doing all the forecasting, all the modeling. Typically that person and somebody who has to go out and raise capital, they will have totally different personalities. If this was a small deal, let's say we're doing a triplex, you'd have to wear all sorts of different hats and do everything. But because we have the scale, you're able to have specialists do everything. So you're able to have an underwriter on the team. Then you're going to have somebody raising the capital on the team. And somebody maybe with construction experience on the team because you're going to be doing a whole bunch of construction and renovations. So you're really able to bring, an expert in each of the different fields that you need, and then they'll all work together to manage that deal. Just because there's more meat on the bone, the more you scale up.
What's your role then?
My role, so I raise capital to come in, and eventually my goal is
the most important role.
Yeah, well, without capital, you
don't get very far without capital.
Well, one thing I say all the time is, are we in the real estate business or are we in the capital raising business? Real estate is the vehicle, but we're really working in the capital business. We are raising money. Mm-hmm. We just happen to use real estate to generate those returns.
Yeah. Very cool. Where can people learn more about this?
Oh,
just email you?
Yeah, they
text
can
you?
text me. Yeah, you can actually visit my YouTube channel,
Okay.
youtube.com/Seth Ferguson. And that is dedicated to multifamily real estate.
Cool. Because last time we talked, I had no idea that you're doing US stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think last time we talked, you were looking at Hamilton stuff.
Yeah, I can't. When did we do that interview? Last year sometime?
For your podcast, I think it was in the summer last year.
Yeah, because we closed Amber Lakes in October last year.
Fascinating stuff.
Very fascinating.
So, folks, I asked Seth ahead of time, a whole 25 minutes ago, if anything was off limits. He said no. So we're going there.
Okay, here we go.
You mentioned potholes.
Oh, yes.
You hit a pothole. What is this pothole?
Yeah, so the pothole was really the worst case scenario that could happen to a real estate investor, just happen to somebody in general. So I'll give you the Coles Notes version. I had a romantic partner where we invested in real estate together. We worked together. We had a son together. That partner wiped out the bank accounts, changed the locks on the house, told me I would never see my son again, and basically rode the portfolio into the ground. So this all happened in a very short period of time. And it was basically the worst thing that it was the worst thing ever. So it was a very rough period. And, I'm still like 2 years later, it's still going on. It is just ridiculous. But, I would say, well, I kind of alluded to it when we were talking about the TV show, but the TV show, the podcast, all this stuff came out of that. Because as soon as, when you're used to living in your house, but then the locks get changed on you, and then when you're used to having money, but then suddenly there's $0 in your bank account, and then when you're driving a vehicle, and then that vehicle disappears when you're in the gym working out, you basically are left with nothing. You have to restart your life somehow. So I figured, well, you know what? I should get my TV show going. I should start a podcast. And then all this stuff came out of that because basically it was like you're living your life one day and then overnight, like in the blink of an eye, like everything you had is gone. So I was really left high and dry, and it was pretty rough.
Is it accurate to say a mental health issue started all this?
Oh, yeah. If you've ever heard of borderline personality disorder, I never heard of it before. But yeah, this was a case of that. And interesting enough, there's it's estimated between 1 in 10 to 1 in 12 people have something kind of like that. So, now when I'm going around, my radar's on. And it's fascinating to learn about. It's just not fun when you're the one living through it. I remember I picked up a book that was suggested by the psychiatrist that had been speaking with her and stuff. And I read the first page, and it was a guy writing kind of first person about his experience. I'm like, this is my life. The guy summed up in one page what I had been living for 6 years. So it was pretty rough.
What are some of the signs?
So I guess the best way to explain it is, imagine you're on a beach and you're standing near the water and you're standing on sand, and then the water comes over your feet and then the sand moves under your feet. Now the ground you're standing on is moving. That's kind of the way it feels, because in my case, it was you have 2 really good days with a person where they're kind of normal, quote unquote. But then for the next 2 weeks, it's like a roller coaster of emotions where an event will pile on the next event on the next event. So an example would be, if you don't respond to a text message within 15 minutes, that person will just explode over a small thing. And it's anxiety comes into it too. So an example would be, if I couldn't remember the color of shirt I put on my son to go to preschool, she would explode and say, well, what happens if he gets abducted today? It just takes it so far on the other edge of the spectrum. It's so hard to explain. Going back to the sand example, you just don't know where the other person is, because it's moving on such a wide and varied scale. It's just the way it was explained to me is that, you and I, if somebody makes fun of you your feelings get hurt and you feel sad. But with somebody with borderline, if they feel sad, in their mind, they will create the person making fun of them to validate the way they're feeling. So it's a totally different way of how they perceive the world. So if, you and I having this conversation, we'll both walk away with a pretty decent recollection of what went on. But if one of us is borderline, we'll walk away with a totally different perception of what occurred based on how we felt. And then we will shift what actually happened in our head to fit that. It gets crazy, very crazy. So, but, when it's all said and done though, like it happened, but there was a lot of, I guess, collateral damage because we owned real estate together. We had these rental properties and
a son.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember that the night the bank accounts got wiped out. So she followed me to a gym parking lot and then told me I would never see my son again. And then she wiped out the bank accounts, just took everything out of the bank accounts. And so basically we have these rental properties, but now there's no money in them. And, obviously you have mortgages, you have expenses and all that stuff. We had just closed on a brand new construction home that was vacant. And then we had another vacancy in another property. So you have these vacancies, but all your reserves are taken out too. She cleared out everything. So now you have mortgages start bouncing. We're both on title. So both of us have to sign to put a tenant in. She refuses to put new tenants in and to lease up the properties. So you've got vacancies, you've got bouncing mortgages, you have nothing in the bank accounts. And then, with the new construction, you have your HST rebate. So in the province of Ontario, and just in case somebody's listening to the outside of Ontario, you're able to get a rebate on the tax you pay as long as you live there for a year or you rent it for a year. That's 25 grand because the property never got rented. So it got bad because mortgages were bouncing, bills weren't being paid. And, your credit takes a huge hit when somebody goes rogue and just empties everything out. And then, my son disappeared for 3 days. And, when somebody tells you you'll never see your son again, and then, you have no idea where he is and he was supposed to be with you and, nobody's responding. It got bad. I never had panic attacks before, but I remember the one time, this is kind of hard to talk about, but I'll go there. But I never had panic attacks, but all of a sudden, I felt like the left side of my body go numb. I thought I was having a heart attack because I was having trouble breathing. I was sweating a lot. So I ended up on the floor, legitimately thinking I was dying of a heart attack. I had no idea what was happening. My vision was going all fuzzy. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel my arm and stuff like that. And I remember lying there on the floor, just feeling guilty for just leaving my son so soon because he was 2 at the time. That was intense. So I learned what stress can do to the body because, before I had stressful things happen, but nothing like that. When your child's involved, that hits you where it hurts. So yeah, crazy, crazy stuff. And that's not even going into half of it. So
you could do it all again. What would you do differently? I meant legally.
Yeah.
No, in terms of JV agreement, prenuptial agreement.
So now,
in order so that you wouldn't have lost control in these situations.
Yeah. So what I tell people now is when they're getting into any sort of JV agreement, have some sort of shotgun clause that's very clear. So if X requirement isn't met, then you're able to force a buyout at this and make it crystal clear, this must happen. So if, X person refuses to lease a property for 60 days, then automatically, their share is bought out at an appraised value and you just have it in the agreement. Because that could have saved me. Because what happens is you end up in court and saying, hey, Your Honor, this person does this, and the judge will issue an order. Then the person has to abide by it. But if they choose not to abide by it, you're going back to court anyway. And it's just a never-ending cycle. So if you can have an agreement that's very clear where you have some sort of shotgun in there where you're able to jettison somebody from the deal if they don't meet what they're supposed to be doing, that could have saved so much I know lots of, franchise agreements and stuff have similar provisions. So it's in there. It would just save a whole lot of people. Now, obviously, like this is a 1 in a million chance. Like not everybody's going to end up with a psycho, crazy person investing in real estate, but it can happen, right?
Because I think in my JV agreements, we can sign leases without our JV partner signing it, even though they own the house.
Yeah. Oh no, and that's perfect. Like the whole thing in real estate is like control, right? Like if you are the person who's managing the deal, you should have control. And that's, when we talk about the syndication structure and stuff, you talk about voting rights and how you can get really creative with that. But yeah, control is so important. And if you're one of two people involved in a deal, like you have to be very crystal clear on responsibilities, expectations, and what happens if those expectations aren't met, and make sure it's in writing.
Let me wonder then, what kind of control do you have in a syndicated investment, like your apartment building?
Yeah. So if you're on the GP side, you have all the voting shares. So a typical split of or class of shares would be class A, B, and C. Class A will be your general partners. So they have the voting rights. They're able to steer the investment. They decide when you sell, when you refinance, what you're doing, what you're renting for. Class C shares are typically your limited partners. So the capital investors, they have no voting rights because they're investing their capital, but they don't have the real estate expertise. They're bringing their capital, so they have no control over that. And then you have Class B, which you can offer in lieu of something. So let's say you're a fund, and a seller doesn't want to create a taxable event. So if they sold, it would create a taxable event. Well, they can actually bring their property into the fund in exchange for B shares, and that's not taxable. So, this person now owns a chunk of the larger real estate fund, and they've gotten rid of the property, but they didn't have to pay any tax. But yeah, and those typically don't have any voting rights either. So the general partners will have the voting rights. They will control the investment, and the limited partners are truly limited in what they can do. They're just bringing the capital.
Since we're talking about the syndication again, what is the term of your investment?
Yeah, so typically a syndication right now will run between 5 and 7 years. Right now, where we're at in terms of market cycle, that's pretty standard. If we go back maybe 5-6 years ago, some people were entering in deals thinking they'd be in for, let's say, 6 years, but they were able to exit in 3 because the market was on its run up. One investor wouldn't love to get their returns in 3 years rather than 5 or 6.
Yeah, it's pretty winning.
Oh yeah, that's a happy day. But yeah, typically it's 5 to 7, but it depends on the deal. It depends on the asset. If it's a really heavy lift, you might be in for longer, but then you're most likely being compensated in terms of that with the returns to be expected. So,
what happens at the exit? Are you guys in 5 to 7 years? Did you sell the building? Or?
Yeah. So one of the things in the States is you're able to front load your your wife would be really into this. So talking about tax credits and stuff. So with cost segregation, where you're basically stripping everything that's not related to the building out of it for tax purposes. So you're able to depreciate your flooring over 5 years, your parking lot over 15 years, the building itself over 35 years, according to the IRS, and the land does not depreciate. In the US, you're able to front load all those depreciation credits into year 1. Well, most of the depreciation credits. So what that means is on day 1, you're realizing a paper loss. That's basically going to wipe out a good chunk of the taxes you're going to pay on the life of the investment. When you get to year 5, 6, 7, your tax credits run out. So it makes more sense to sell, get into a new deal, and recycle those tax credits because you've just bought a new deal. And then you also look at return on equity versus return on investment. Typically, if you're doing a value add strategy where you're improving rents, improving the building, the return on equity will go down around that time because you've already improved the building. It makes more sense to sell.
Yeah, you brought up the highest and best per use.
Yeah,
so you've done your job.
Yeah, and it makes more sense to get into a new deal at that point. Some people, will hold their deals for 10 years. If it's more like a core type, I'm a big fan of like that Class B type of asset where you're dealing with regular folks who are your tenants. Class A, if you're core, you will likely hold for a little bit longer, let's say, and you're buying a great location, great city center, high-end tenants without as much of a value add play there. So you're going to be holding longer. It all depends on what you're going for. But yeah, short answer, 5 to 7 years.
And do you get that rollover thing where you don't pay taxes if you
Oh, the 1031 exchange?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Damn, you have to pay taxes?
But your tax credits have basically wiped out a good chunk, right? So, and that's why that 5 to 7 year kind of hold period makes sense, because your tax credits run out. A lot of high net worth individuals love it because basically they use it as a tax strategy too. A, their money's working way harder, but B, like they're wiping out a significant chunk of their income tax through investing in real estate, right? No, a 1031 exchange, if you're owning it, like let's say you own the building, you're able to do a 1031 exchange into like a larger property and keep leapfrogging that way. But with a syndication, you can. But generally speaking, I know people who have done a 1031 exchange where it's a single investor bringing, let's say, $10 million on his own, and they will structure that deal for him only. But when you have one investor coming in with like 20 other investors, it doesn't make sense.
Interesting. Yeah. For listeners' benefit, 1031 exchange, you don't have to pay capital gains if you're trading up. If you're trading, do you have to trade up? You can't trade down or trade the same?
Yeah, well, nobody would ever really trade the same, right? Like would always improve. But yeah, you're basically like in Canada here, every time you sell a property, you're paying the government. In the States, you're able to defer taxes. So the trick there is you defer taxes through the 1031 process all the way throughout your life. And then you're able to do your estate planning. And there's a way you can structure it. I'm not an estate planner or anything, but you can structure it in a way where the tax basically disappears. And then your kids can take over the property for very little.
God bless America.
Oh, freedom. True freedom. But unfortunately, we don't have that here.
Just thinking out loud, like if you want people to invest, that's a pretty good program.
100%. And you know what? Like, I'm of the opinion where, like, I think if you have money going into housing and real estate, like it affects the economy. Like, I would want, like, if I'm setting government policy, I want capital flowing into real estate because real estate is the start of so many other industries and jobs. Like, it's a job creation machine. So, yeah.
So you mentioned when we weren't recording, you're exiting, because of this relationship, pothole. Have you had to liquidate like almost everything?
Yeah. So all my single family stuff is gone now. So it's all bye-bye. And
in Milton, is it?
Yeah, we had Brantford, Milton. Yeah, most of it was in Milton.
Was any of it hard to sell?
Oh no, it's Milton. But the hard thing though is like a couple of them got sold last year, and the market now is a lot hotter. So, but it is what it is. Like at this point, like I call this my $200,000 mistake. Like you just have to cut your losses and like get out and then start afresh. So I am in the process of starting afresh. Mm-hmm. I think it hurt because, you take pride in the portfolio you're growing and, you worked hard to get it. So it kind of hurts to see it go. But I think the one thing, like she was able to take the money, she was able to take my car, she was able to take like all that stuff, but she wasn't able to erase, my experience from the past 13 years. I'll be way past where I was in, less than half the time, just because I know what not to do this time and all that stuff. So I'll be back on my feet.
Just curious. Do you know what your legal tab is?
Oh, I don't even want to know. It was like, it's rough though, because like I started from $0. So like, how do you hire a lawyer when basically she's like wiped everything out?
Yeah, and your credit's damaged.
Oh, huge hit. Well, because you have all those mortgages bouncing, but there's nothing you can do because like you're both on the mortgage. It's like, hey, like I have emails saying she's refusing to rent these properties. It doesn't matter, right? The lender, they just want their money. But yeah, crazy.
Were the lenders difficult to work with?
No, actually, the lenders were pretty good. Like I just said, hey, listen, like I'm in court on this day. I'm trying to force the sale of this property. I understand, these payments bounced, but like this is the process. And they're like, yeah, just update us. Like it's a bounced payment still hurts your credit. It's interesting because like, anybody who's been had debt issues before, there's different language they'll use. And with one of the properties, they were like, they didn't mention power of sale. They said like, further steps may be necessary. Yeah. And, me being in real estate, what those further steps are. But
they generally don't want to though.
Oh no, like it costs them money to do that. But yeah, the main thing is like, if anybody else is in this, like even with Corona, if they're having issues, like open communication is probably the best thing. Like tell them what you're doing,
Yeah.
keep a record of everything.
Well, September 25th, you have like 5 more days to get a mortgage deferral.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Do that first. Buy yourself some time.
100%. But yeah, like just don't put yourself in that spot. Like go see a lawyer before you buy any property. Make sure those clauses are in there for worst case scenario. And like, like in my case, like I'm like, oh, this can't get any worse. And then the car disappears. Oh no, this can't get any worse. And then my son disappears. So like always think like outside the box, like what is the worst possible thing that can happen in this deal, right?
That's why we have lawyers.
Yeah. And then try and plan for it.
God.
Yeah.
You have a chance to do it all over again, basically. Because
Yeah.
you're going to have some cash available.
Yeah.
So what's the plan for it?
Yeah. So I'm focusing now on multifamily real estate. For me, long term, that is the best avenue for me. And actually, it all came about with my son. Actually, I have him to blame for my switch. So I remember, you might have had this experience with your kids, but like I remember holding my son for the first time, and it's like overnight you have this instinctive urge to like be better and do better, but not for yourself anymore, but for somebody else. And doing something for somebody else, I think, is way more powerful than doing it for yourself. And so I remember I was holding my son and, all these, feelings and thoughts. And then the next day I was thinking, okay, well, how can I do more? How can I be better? And that's when I realized, okay, well, I'd have to own 1,000 houses. How can I use real estate, but get there without owning 1,000 houses? And then that's when I started into the multifamily stuff and getting educated. It all started when my son was born.
And then the potholes, what got you becoming an influencer?
Oh boy, yeah. But you know what? Like, luckily, like I got out when I did. You can actually think of it as like an abusive type of relationship because like you're just being yelled at all the time.
You're a referee. You're used to this.
Oh yeah, well that's true. But like,
what are you, blind?
Oh boy, yeah. But but now that I'm out though, like in retrospect, like I should have gotten out way sooner. But like Callum was so young, and that was actually one of the hardest decisions, like hardest calls being a refereeing I ever had to make was being like, this is toxic, like this can't go on, like we're done, because like you have a little baby at home. And then that was the hardest decision I think I've ever had to make in my life. But it was the right decision. It just I kicked myself for waiting as long as I did, because I should have manned up and made it sooner. But I'm just so fortunate I did it when I did, because like another 10 years, like it saps your soul. Like how you feel about yourself. Like if somebody has a passion or they have an interest or they want to do something, your partner should support you in that. You should never be beat down for wanting to improve your life or like your children's lives. And like some people, you probably get this a lot too. Hey, I want to buy my first investment property, but my wife says it's stupid.
Often doesn't work out.
No. And that's not the right partner for you if that's their way of thinking. Like you should be encouraged to buy your first investment property because you're doing it for everybody's benefit. And like we both know, like buying investment properties, like that's one of the best surefire ways of taking control of your finances. So it breaks my heart when somebody tells me or asks me for advice. Oh, well, my parents say it's stupid and all that. No, that's not how you should be thinking about it. That's not how you should be supported. The message should be, yes, that's great. Like, educate yourself. What are you doing to learn more about this?
So how did your parents get rich then?
Yeah.
They're not rich. Oh, okay. Let's ask someone who is rich and how they got successful doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what does their balance sheet look like, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, so whenever you're looking at whether business partners or romantic partners, like will that person support you and push you to grow in a positive way, rather than with that negative type of energy that just like saps? Because I know I'm far more energized now. Like, it's almost like your soul gets sucked out of you, but then it comes back pretty quick. So
awesome. I have to ask, because you're going to at least allocate a little money to stock hacking.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's Erwin's podcast. Of course, we have to talk about stock hacking.
Hey, we did talk about it when I was on. Oh, actually, no, we did talk about it when I was on a TV show.
Yeah.
No, just trying to keep it real.
Yeah. So obviously, like my access to funds was very little. So I'm trading with a small account right now. I'm very excited to boost up my account and start doing a lot more with it. But before, I'd been in real estate for 13 years. I knew real estate like the back of my hand. But stocks and the stock market, I didn't really know too much about it. So we were doing the interview and you said, hey, I'm doing this thing. You should come and learn, come out, check it out. I'm glad I did, because I learned so much about something that I was pretty ignorant of. And it's just, I think of it as another tool or another place you can put your money to put it to work. And, it's different than real estate. Real estate, is beautiful for so many different reasons. You've got leverage, you've got the tax implications, the tax savings, all that stuff. But the stock hacking, it just blew my mind in terms of like what you can do with it. And it's far more than just, you buy a stock and hope it goes up. That's like lots of people buying a house. You just buy a house and then you hope it goes up. That's not the way to do it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward over the next couple months to actually fund my account properly and go nuts with it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have to ask you about London Real.
Oh yeah.
How did you get on the show?
Oh,
explain London Real is pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's run by a guy named Brian Rose. He's actually gone a little more out there.
Yeah, when the pandemic started.
Yeah.
A lot of people have.
Yeah. So, but back when I was talking with them, so like the big pothole had just hit. Like basically I had no money. I had lost my car. I was locked out of the house. All this crazy stuff was happening. Oh, and then I forgot to add, overnight, we shared an office. The night she took all the money, all the stuff in the office disappeared overnight too. It was just like everything disappeared. But anyways, I knew like a podcast, like if I want to become a figure that's known in, let's say, the multifamily real estate space, I need to know more people and I need to speak with more people. And a podcast was a good way to do it because you're able to meet guests, have them on the show, and then you're able to broadcast that message to so many different people. So I didn't know anything about podcasting. I had never listened to a podcast. I knew nothing about it. I just knew it was something for me to do. So I had watched on YouTube, I knew Joe Rogan had a podcast. I knew Brian Rose had a podcast too called London Real. And I started, listening to these guys. I'm like, you know what, this Brian, he does it really well. I'm a visual person, so I'll watch it on YouTube rather than just listen. So I was watching him he actually has some really good guests on, Grant Cardone. Well, you had Grant as your keynote speaker last year. So he had Grant on a couple times. He had some Robert Kiyosaki on, all these influential people. I'm like, if I'm going to learn something, I might as well learn from the best guy. Same thing with commercial real estate. I sought out one of the top guys. He controls over $1 billion of the asset. I want to learn what you're doing. So same thing with podcasting. I want to learn what you're doing. So I went over to London and toured the studio, kind of saw his setup and all that stuff. So that was really cool. Sat down in the chair it was 15 or 20 minutes. It wasn't very long, but we had a chat and that was pretty neat. So, and at that time the speed bump was still really fresh. So we had a little talk about that. And
when was it? When were you in the studio?
Oh boy. Yeah, it was probably over a year ago now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was, I'm really bad with dates. I say everything's a couple of years ago when it could be 5 years ago, but
because Brian's quite well prepared for his interviews.
Oh, for sure.
The opposite of this show.
Yeah.
And I knew you were well prepared.
Yeah. Well, I did my research on you before you came on. And actually I should shamelessly plug that because that was a really good interview you did. So check out Erwin's interview on my YouTube channel. It's on there. I think
is that the only place you can find it?
Yeah. Well, you can go on the podcast too. It's called Purchase to Profits. That's the podcast. But yeah, I think you did a great job. And we should start a marriage counseling show because
everyone, my advice is go find yourself your own cherry.
Yeah. Oh, she's not there. Or for everybody listening, Erwin just peeked over into the glass, but she's not there. So
yeah. I'll make a quick point about that though, because like Cherry is incredibly supportive of everything I've done.
Yeah.
And also she knew who I was when we were together. We didn't, because I think I was 33, 34. I was pretty well into my real estate journey already.
Mm-hmm.
So she already knew what I was up to and where I was trending towards. I don't know if she knew what I was trending towards, but versus like if you're like high school sweethearts and you're 15 years old, you don't really know what that person's going to be like. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that when we started our partnership, she had a good idea who I was. And if she wasn't supportive, it wouldn't have worked out then. We wouldn't have gotten married. When did you get married? How old were you?
We were never married. That's the thing. Like, we're common law because we have our son. Yeah. But that's the scary thing. Like, and I was totally ignorant of the law and stuff like that. Like, I should have talked to a lawyer being like, hey, like, we're getting pretty serious, like, with this relationship, like, what are the implications? So like, as soon as like we separated, and then like she's suing like a ton of other people, it's just over the top ridiculous. But like, I knew nothing about, common law or stuff like that. So I'm like, what? Like,
yeah, we're not married. What's up with this?
Yeah. And then
we didn't sign nothing.
No. And then she was trying to come, like, she had some other kids. So she was trying to come after me for like support for her other children that I had nothing to. It was just, I was like, what's going on here? So, but yeah, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, Brian Rose. Yeah. Oh yeah. So everybody check out.
You can tell who the good podcaster host is.
Yeah. So, I was plugging your interview. So go check out Erwin's interview on YouTube. It was really good. My way of thinking is if I'm trying to learn something, same with what you're doing with Stock Hacker, right? Like, I want to learn from somebody who's at the top. Like, I want to learn from the guy performing at the top of his field or her field, whether it's real estate, podcasting, fencing, yeah, all that
refereeing,
stuff. Refereeing, yeah.
Gary Fraser, right?
yeah. I kind of miss hockey actually, but
it'll be back. Don't worry. You think hockey's not coming back in
Canada? No. I just mean me refereeing and stuff. Like, I'm all washed up and retired now, but I had a good run.
You'd rather referee than play?
I was better refereeing than playing. Like, I went much farther refereeing. Like, I refereed.
Referees don't score goals. Come on.
No, they don't. But they got to like be on the ice there. But like, I was on the ice with guys like Connor McDavid, Max Domi, Taylor Hall, like all those guys. Uh-huh. And the OHL was a good product. Spent some time in the States doing some pro and junior down there. I got to live the dream of like a professional like referee. And if I stuck with playing, I would never have gotten there. Never. So
you could center McDavid.
Not a chance.
Keep up with him.
my hands would be like concrete compared to Connor McDavid.
Who chirped you the worst?
Who chirped me the worst? Ooh.
Of any of the bigger names, because we need to know who they are.
Well, I have to say, like, Connor McDavid, like, he was quiet on the ice. Didn't really say boo. Taylor Hall didn't say boo. Like, all those good guys, they were great on the ice.
Max Domi?
Oh, yeah.
You didn't say nothing?
No, he was actually good on the ice. Marner started line brawl in the last year in the league. But no, all those guys were good. Lemieux, though, was chirpy.
Wait, which Lemieux?
What's his first name?
Claude?
No. Oh, I forget.
What age group?
I forget. I'll have to go on Hockey Database and I'll feel like an idiot when I find it. But anyways, yeah, the guys were pretty good for the most part.
No kidding. I would have thought there'd be some massive egos.
No. Why? It's like...
And McDavid, I see in his personality, he's a quiet guy.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, most fans don't, like, until you're on the ice, you don't really know the true feeling of the game and the ice and stuff like that. Like, I think, and that's one of the things I find in minor hockey, so like kids hockey, everybody has a perception of the way the game's supposed to be in terms of how coaches are supposed to act and all that stuff. But when you get up to the major, junior, and professional levels, that's not the way it is. That's just how people think it is. So like, for example, people may see on TV a coach going ballistic, but he's putting on a show because that's his job. And he's putting on a show for 20 seconds. But you don't see the rest of the game where he's fine. And then 5 minutes later, he goes, hey, sorry, like I got a little heated. Like, and then everything's like, people don't see that. So you have all these emotions running in a kid's hockey game and the coach yelling and screaming, but that's not how it's supposed to be. It's so wrong. But that could be another like 2-hour podcast on like sports and stuff like that.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think my listenership would like that.
No.
We talk anymore about sports, I'm going to get some negative reviews.
Okay.
So Seth, if anyone, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Where can folks follow you?
Yeah. So
TikTok,
no,
Snapchat.
No. You can find me on YouTube, like I said. So youtube.com/Seth Ferguson. You can also go to sethferguson.org and find me there. And then for the podcast, you can find Purchase to Profits. That's on iTunes, Stitcher, you name it. You can find it there. We're actually going to be renaming the podcast in about a month. But you'll be able to find it Purchase to Profits. I can't say anything more about that right now. That's a secret.
No one listens to the show. You can say it.
No, the podcast, like just like you, like we have really great guests on, like guys doing some amazing things in real estate. So, and it's investing specific for real estate. So we'll have commercial real estate, so multifamily, office, retail, industrial. Airbnb people come on, single family home investors, but we're just talking about investing.
Awesome. And then I have to ask the question. I don't really know how to ask it. It's kind of like, let's use a sports analogy. Now that we understand the problems, long-term problems with concussions, for example.
Yes.
And I remember Keith Primo, he had to retire early. He talks about all the problems and stuff like that, the headaches and depression, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But then the last question anyone will ask him is like, would you do it all over again? He goes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's incredible to say. And he's probably got bad knees.
Yeah.
Whatever other physical ailments. Would you do it again?
In what respect?
Would you have bought houses with that partner? Because one of the things I'm trying to get to is I don't want to scare people from getting started.
No. Oh, no. I don't want anybody to be scared from what I've talked about, because this is a 1 in a million chance. The message I want to send out there is speak to a lawyer and just be prepared just in case. Chances are it will never happen. It's like on a real estate deal, you want to use a good lawyer in the off chance something does go wrong. But I think the more you can prepare in advance, the smoother the waters will be. So yeah, if somebody's on the fence wanting to get in, act now. Real estate is not getting cheaper. Just take the plunge, have confidence in yourself, partner and align yourselves with good people. You help a lot of investors out there. Work with the right people and they will guide you. And don't expect a home run with your first deal. It happens, but it's just one deal at a time and then slowly build. But would I do it again? Because I have my son, I have to say yes, because he changed my life in many different ways. It was a ringer to go through, but because my son came out of it, I would say yes.
And to your point about things not getting any cheaper, apparently the Democrats are trying to pass a $2.4 trillion stimulus package.
Oh boy. Big government and government spending makes me, wake up at night. So I'm a small government fan, but yeah.
Yeah, but hopefully it means more of your tenants will have money.
That's true. That's true.
Seth, thanks for doing this. Thanks for being so open. We shouldn't wait so long. Actually, this is the first time you're on.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. Like, kudos to you, and you run a good operation. So thanks for having me.
You see how ghetto the operation is, though. Thanks again, Seth. Before you go, if you're interested in being a successful real estate investor like those who have been featured on this podcast and our hundreds of successful clients, please let us know. It is our honor to give back and educate others on how we ourselves build cash flowing real estate portfolios using all the best practices shared on this podcast, from the lessons of our hundreds of clients, and of course, our own experience in owning investment real estate. If you didn't already know, we pride ourselves at being the best of the best in real estate as coaches, having the best property managers, contractors, handy people, cleaners, lawyers, accountants, everyone you need on your power team. We're happy to share them with our clients to ensure your success. New investors or seasoned investors alike, we can help anyone by providing our award-winning coaching services. And this isn't all talk. We have been awarded Realtor of the Year to investors in 2015 by the Real Estate Investment Network, 2016 by the Canadian Real Estate Wealth Magazine, and again in 2017 because no one told the judges no one is supposed to win the award twice. But on merit, our peers deemed us to be the best. And again, in 2018, we again won the same award by the Real Estate Investment Network. So 4 years in a row, we collected that award, and it'll never happen again. We will be the only team to ever win these awards, collect this number of awards, because Canadian Real Estate Wealth magazine doesn't give out awards anymore. Hopefully, being the most decorated team of realtors in Ontario will make you consider us for your next or first real estate investment. Even if you don't invest in our areas, there's a good chance I know who would be ideal for you. I've been around for a while. It's a very small community. Everybody knows everybody. There are some realtors who are talented at servicing investors, and there are a great many with great ethics. Unfortunately, the intersection of the two, talent and ethics, is actually very limited to only a handful in each city or town. Only work with the best of the best is what my father always taught me. If you're interested, drop us an email at iWIN@infinitywealth.ca. That's IWIN at infinitywealth.ca. Hope to meet you at one of our future meetups soon. Again, that's iWIN@infinitywealth.ca. That's our email address. All right. Hope to see you soon.